a multi-award-winning Lebanese architecture firm established in 2002. Initially based in Qatar, MZ Architects became within a few years one of the leading architecture and consultancy groups in Qatar and in the Gulf, with a regional office in Abu Dhabi. In 2007, luckily, Zgheib decided to reassign his firm's headquarters in Lebanon as an architecture and urban planning practice. The firm's projects are spread across Qatar, UAE, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Africa. In the past few years, the international architecture community has recognized and celebrated the work of Marwan Zgheib through more than 30 international architecture award programs, such as the WAF Awards, MIPIM, LEAF Awards, and many more. As part of his extracurricular activities, Marwan Zgheib was the president of the Leo, right? Pronouncing it correctly? Okay, sorry. And has been an active caver and member of the club for the past 30 years. He is also an amateur photographer and has participated in collective photography and exhibitions in Lebanon. Today, we will most certainly learn from what he has to say to us. So the stage is yours. Marwan Zgheib, please.
Thank you very much. I have to start by admitting that I'm someone who doesn't know Beirut at all. I left the country in '95 at the very beginning of what they called reconstruction. I stayed for more than 20 years, and then I used to come for a few days, and when I come, I used to visit the archaeological site, the excavations during the day. At night, I was in very few places between Hamra and Gemmayzeh, so basically, I never knew the city. I never lived in it, never worked in it. It was only during the revolution that I really knew the city. I was almost every day during the revolution, and I got to know and I got to meet people from Beirut. And because I'm not a very urban person, you know, I'm from the mountain. I love the mountain. I love hiking. I love trees. I never understood the attachment of the people of Beirut to the city until that very specific period of time. And I discovered also that Beirut is not a walkable city. Okay, I felt that it was like cut into sectors, and I'll talk about that later on. Can we dim the light, please? It's better? Okay. So, that's why we were asked to talk about what we think of Beirut, what we think of the port, and some of our projects. But I wanted to add what we think of the people of Beirut. That's why it will be into three parts, my presentation. The first one will be Metamorphosis and the people, Metamorphosis, the city, and the latest work. I took this photo in Babylon few months before the attack. Okay, I went to Iraq. I wanted to visit Iraq before the war starts. And I was practically alone there. I don't like to call it tourist. I was the only stranger. There were a few people doing some restoration work. There was 2 guards and this man. This man was cleaning around the famous Lion of Babylon. And the guard comes to me and he said, "Do you want me to push him away?" I said, no, please leave him. What is he doing? He said, "He's a madman. He lives nearby. He's a Bedouin. He lives nearby. And he thinks that he's a descendant of the city. He thinks that his ancestor lives here. And he comes here, and every day he cleans around the lion." And I told him, "So he's not paid to do that? He's not he said, "No, he's not an employee." I said, "Please leave him." I took some photos. And this really touched me. Because I felt that this guy, okay, after 4,000 years, somehow he gave life back to the city. And this attachment that this person has to this city is not related to money, is not related to anything. It's just what he believes, whether he was a madman or not. Definitely, he doesn't have the same DNA of the same people who lived here 4,000 years back. But this is what he believes. And this made me thought of the similarity with those people who really cares about the city, and they came for no reason, and they want to help the city for no reason in their own way. As the title of my presentation suggests, Metamorphosis, it is inspired from the book of Kafka. For those of you who doesn't know the book, it's a story about a young man, Gregor Samsa, who one day he was a devoted, a good person. He goes to work every day, and one day he wakes up and he finds out that he's changed into an insect, a giant insect. And there are 5 characters in this book, and I want to show how they reacted and how this is similar to what happened to Beirut. So as I said, he wakes up one day, he became an insect. Let's imagine this is what happened to Beirut. The beautiful Beirut, one day we woke up all and we find out that the city is almost destroyed. And let's imagine that these silos represent Gregor himself. We have the 3 strangers, and let's imagine that as tourists or people who come for little interest to the country. Immediately when they saw what happened, they saw, we are leaving, we are not staying here anymore. We have the boss of Gregor. He said, I don't care if he's a human or if he's an insect, the job has to be done. And we can imagine that as some, not all, but some of the developers who do really not care about the city, but they care about their personal interest. And there is the family. There is the mother, the father, and the sister. The mother, she was like in denial. Every time she sees him, she fades away. So she represents to me the people who are in denial of what happened. They don't want to know, they don't want to see, they don't want to be part of it. They feel sorry, but they don't want to be part of it. And then is the father. The father, he was very harsh, very aggressive with his son, and he started pushing him away, throwing apples at him, until one day one apple got stuck and got an infection, and he eventually dies. I will leave this to your imagination. You can tell who exactly he represents. And then there is the sister, this fantastic character. The sister is the one who really cared about her brother. She knew very well that although he changed from outside, but this is the same spirit, the same person, the same soul. And she was taking care of him, and she was the only one getting inside his room. And for me, she represents the people of Beirut. In the book, they all left after he dies. I hope this doesn't happen to Lebanon, to Beirut. I said this story for a simple reason, because there is a big question today, and everybody is talking about it. Should we, especially architects, should we keep the silos? Should we remove them? What should we do? What's your opinion, etc.? I think it's not up to us as architects to decide, and it's not up to the municipality to decide or the government to decide. It's up to the people of Beirut to decide. Okay, they are the one who really suffered from what happened. They are the one who lost their beloved one. They lost their houses, their work, and they should decide whether to keep it or not to keep it. If you ask me the same question before the explosion, I would say yes, definitely you should remove the port, like any other city in the world. Any cities are expanding, and obviously we remove the ports, and we should do it before and after the explosion. It has nothing to do. And it depends on every city. Mostly for a city like Beirut, who has absolutely no green area, no green parks, it should become like a beautiful green park, a natural extension of the city to the sea. If you ask me about the silos, if you had asked me this before the explosion, I would say you can keep it and you can remove it. It doesn't matter. It depends on the opinion of the person who's going to do the whole development. But if you ask me today after the explosion, I would say my personal opinion is we should keep it. We should keep it because history keeps repeating itself in Lebanon. Okay? And every period of time we talk again about reconstruction, we talk again about survival, we keep talking about it all the time. It seems that we have a very short memory. Keeping something like this for the generation to come will show them the shame, and will show it will be like a memory for the city for all the generation to come. Many projects all over the world has been done, treated. This might be the latest one. To my knowledge, this is the latest one. This is called the City of Silence in New York, appreciated, by the way, before by Le Corbusier himself. And this, although New York, they have a huge park, they decided to keep it and to do it like another park, and to add some cultural areas, okay? The spaces will become like cultural and educational and leisure areas. So there is no doubt that we should keep whatever is remaining now from our silos. The second part will be about the city. How the metamorphosis of the city. How did the city change? There are many factors, and maybe my colleague before me, especially Shar, was a bit emotional about the city. I don't want to be very negative. Okay, definitely he is right. I agree with him on every word he said. But if we, all of us, are going to be in a very negative attitude, I think nothing will move or will keep moving. And I think that there are things we are responsible of it as Lebanese in destroying the country, for sure. But there are things that are common to all the cities. I will try to be more general and to go specifically to Beirut. As I said at the beginning, I'm not someone who knows Beirut. I'm not someone who can talk about the urban planning of Beirut, but I'm going to give a very quick analysis about what I saw. To me, there are many factors affecting all the cities in the world today. Definitely the climate change, definitely the urban planning, the big problem of scale happening everywhere now in the world, this obsession of having landmarks everywhere, and the horizontal development that is taking over the forest almost everywhere in the world. If I consider these two cities, I have Beijing and I have Qatar. I lived in Qatar. I knew Qatar not like this, but a bit more developed. But the high-rise building you see over there, I did participate in some of them, and I saw the growth of the city very fast. Between these two cities, the only difference is that in Doha, in Qatar, they kept the old city. The old city is a few kilometers away. They did not touch it. They created a new area where they did build all their towers. Okay, it is debatable. I know it's not as environmentally speaking. I know all the negative thing of it, but this is not our discussion today. But at least they did not touch the old city. And the impact between the two cities and the dialogue is too shy. They are far away from each other, so there is no direct impact on the old city. As for Beijing, today you cannot recognize it. For the people who knew it before and the way it's happening now, it's completely different. Now, what are we facing in Beirut? In fact, in Beirut, we are on the same track of Beijing, which means we are removing old constructions, we are removing old houses, and planting towers between them. Okay? Although they kept some areas, and we'll talk about that later on, but still putting a high-rise building next to an old house, whatever you do as architect, you will never succeed to create a proper dialogue between both of them. There will be this effect of smashing of the whole neighborhood, not only of the house. As I showed before in the sketch, I talked about the urban planning. The urban planner, this pen, when you draw a line on paper, sometimes they don't think what it's going to be, the result, how it's going to be, the effect on the neighborhood or people living there. This is Caracas, and I don't need to explain. It's so obvious how this road becomes like a barrier, okay, and it's cutting the city in two parts. I showed this photo to say, do we have this in Beirut? In fact, we do have this, and I experienced it personally, again, during the revolution. Once you are in Gemmayze area, for example, you cannot go walking to Al-Hamra, because you are cut with this ring road, okay? Maybe we don't see it as clear as here, but if you analyze it properly, a city like Beirut should be a walkable city, a friendly city, a city where you can walk your dog or you can ride your bicycle and you go from the extreme to extreme without any cutting. In fact, it's not like that. It is cut into sectors, although we don't think about it, but it is there. The problem of scale is taking over, I think, everywhere in the world now. Okay, the latest one should be this one, the Herzog and de Meuron, what they call the triangle. It's a high-rise building to be built in Paris. This is their old proposal. There is a new one. They changed it lately. I will not show any photos of Beirut. And I'm sure for you who knows Beirut will know what I mean. Okay? When you see a nice old neighborhood and then suddenly a glass tower or whatever tower will come and will be planted between all those houses. Whatever you do as architect, my personal opinion, you will never succeed. And amazingly, while we were taking coffee now in the piazza upstairs, we have the same example. We have this beautiful old building, and then we have this smashing building next to it. Okay? Although it's not glass, it can be eco-friendly, it can be whatever it is, but still you cannot resolve the problem of scale. And this is not the job of the architect, it's the job of the urban planner. As I said before, there is another problem, this obsession with the forms, this obsession with landmarks. Everybody wants his building to be different. Everybody wants his building to be a landmark, the highest, the longest, stuff like that, especially in the Gulf. But it seems that it's spreading all over the world now. It's no longer in the Gulf. If we take London, for example, the very first building of Norman Foster, the Gherkin building, was fantastic, you know, for me at least. I know that lots of people were against this project. It was debatable like any other project of this kind. But I really loved it, and I had the chance to visit when it was alone. So I saw how it integrates itself between the old buildings, and there is kind of decent dialogue. You know, Foster is known for this kind of projects. For you who knows the Bibliothèque de Lille in front of the temple, there is an amazing dialogue between the two buildings. Even here, it was fantastic. But that was when the building was alone. Now that there are so many towers growing all around, and we saw also the master plan and the model in one of the exhibitions, I think the face of the, not even the face, I would say the identity, the whole identity of London will change. Of course, Prince Charles was one of the people against what's happening, and I didn't agree at all with him. He was backed up by big architects and art critics like Creer and Charles Jenks and all those people who were against what's happening. And back then, when I was a student, I did not agree at all. But if you ask me today, I would tell you yes, because I went there and I saw the way the city changed, and it's a complete different city. And if they keep doing this, we are going to end up, they are going to end up with, as he said, a picnic table. Okay, like different shapes, each one facing each other. Now, why do we have this problem? When you invite what they call signature architect or star architect, okay, you invite them like they did here in Beirut, and they were expecting to have a more attractive city. I invite Zaha Hadid, I invite Foster, Arata Isozaki. I'm expecting, you know, a city and architecture to be more spectacular and things like that. But we have to be careful what we wish for. Because if you put a monument alone, as I said, in an old city, and the city might reject it and the city might embrace it. In this case, it was beautiful, like the pyramid of the Louvre, like any other project of this kind. But if you put 10 landmark projects, if each one facing each other, it will end up like a salad. If we take Beirut, for example, sorry for the quality of the photo, but I insisted on putting this one because of the rain, and I'll explain why. If I show this photo to 100 universities all over the world, 100 schools of architecture, and we ask the students who are supposed to know architects and to read and study about them, and we ask them, whose building is this? I can bet you that no one will tell you this is Arata Isozaki. No one. I know the work of Arata Isozaki. I was a big fan of his work. He's a very serious architect, and he did a lot for the world of architecture, especially in the theoretical part. He was someone who went so deep in the architecture of Japan and and he pushed it to further limit him and Kisho Kurokawa and other architects from that period. But if I see this work, I would never say this is Arata Izuzaki's work. So if the intention was to bring big names, to bring those big boys and, to get their work in the city, we failed. We got their name, but we didn't get the work. Now, if we get those people because we want good architecture to integrate itself, knowing that no signature architect, to my knowledge, very few of them, they really care about the urban tissue. They don't care about where they are integrating. They care about the statement they want to make there. They care about people coming later on and taking photos of their building. But if we look at this building, what we see, Msharrabiye, what for? It doesn't belong at all to the Lebanese culture. It doesn't exist in our traditional architecture. Msharrabiye on our balconies. Why? We don't need to hide. We like to be on a nice balcony. We like to watch the sea. We like to see one of the most beautiful piazzas, the most important piazza maybe in Lebanon. Why should I hide from it? Plus, I put Msharrabiye, if it's to protect from the sun, as most of them say, it's fully to the north. So there's absolutely no excuse to such architecture. And look at this woman walking with her umbrella. And those people now, because it's not raining, but I experienced this part of Beirut under the rain. There is no urban umbrella. How can we accept a city like Beirut, where we have the 4 seasons? Okay, we have an amazing weather in Lebanon, and we know we have lots of rain, we have sun, we have beautiful wind, we have all that, and it's not a walkable city. If it's not a walkable city, it's because of the regulations. And this is what my friend before was talking about when he was attacking, the municipality and so and so and so. And I do agree with him. If you ask me what you see, I say, I don't care about the building here. You want to give me a real Beirut, give me big trees. Let me see big trees in front of this building. Whatever it was, the design was, I don't care. Give me a nice protection from the rain. Let me walk from building to another unprotected from the rain, from the sun. Give me a lane for bicycle. Let me see people with bicycle or people with dog walking. And they are able to walk the whole city without being interrupted by, this big highways, stuff like that. What I'm saying here is not to criticize this building in particular. But from what I saw so far, this and the building facing it and others, I think, for me, my personal opinion, this is a big failure. And luckily, because of the situation, everybody stopped the construction. But one day, if they will continue putting all those people facing each other, the center of Beirut will end up like a bowl of salad. Another problem is the invasion that we're doing on the suburbs, for the Holder Forest. I will give an example because I live and work in Juni, so we took this photo from my office. This is an old monastery in Harissa, in the mountain of Harissa. And we did some exercise. You see, before you had the houses on the sea, and then you had this monastery. That was it. And then the building started climbing on the mountain. This is the actual situation. And this is what's going to happen maybe in 50 years or so. Why do I say this? It's very simple. All the plots of Harissa and the area are private. In fact, from Beirut, going all the way there, it is private. So how can we still talk about the city? I mean, when you're landing, if you're coming back to Lebanon from the airplane and you're landing, you can see that from Saida up to Tripoli, it's one linear city. For me, there is no longer one city. The whole country became like a linear city, like a forest of concrete. So if we see this picture, this is a real picture of Beirut now, and I show you what could happen, and we imagine that this can be the whole Lebanese coast. So what we should do now, in my opinion, there should be a straightforward regulation to create more green areas, to connect the city more to the sea. Now, I have this example in my hand. This is Aldo Rossi. I don't know if you know this architect. He died young. He's an Italian architect. He He didn't do a lot of work. He wrote a lot. He wrote about cities. And I saw his work. I saw his work in Genoa. I saw his work in Germany, in Berlin. And I'm a big fan of his work. I love his drawings a lot. But this person, maybe he's not an urban planner. Maybe he doesn't analyze and, you know, the proportion and size. But he does feel. Okay, he comes from a school that we call Tendenza. It's an Italian school of architecture. And when I look at this sketch, this is how I would like to see Beirut. Okay, a direct relation between the sea and the city. He did not urbanize all the sea. He kept the natural flow of the coast, you know. Look at the proportion between the trees and the buildings. Look at the organic space, how you can move from one building to another. Of course, they did not choose him back then because it was the competition for Beirut. I don't know why, but for me, this is how Beirut should look. And this is why I go back to the beginning when I said that definitely, I don't agree with Charles. Charles said before me that, for who are here, it's not the time to think of Beirut Port. It's true we have other issues. But now, الحديد حامي. Now people can decide. Later on, they will not decide. And the people of Beirut are the only one who can decide. The port should become an urban park. It is a must. Otherwise, in the coming 50 years, we will not see any tree in Beirut. It will become all like a forest of concrete and steel. I will stop here for Beirut. We were asked to show some of our projects. As you know, we do work in the Gulf area mainly and a little bit in Africa. Up there you see two of our latest jobs. The first one is called Al-Qana. It's an urban. I chose some urban project related to the subject. So the first one is Al-Qana. It's a leisure mixed-use complex in Abu Dhabi. It's already finished. The other one needs a few months to finish. It's called Yes Creative Hub. It's a media zone. But I will be talking about the three projects down because there is a message that I would like to send to you. The first one is the concept of the Valley City. Is a project we did in 2008. Now they are talking about it again. The second one, and this one in the Valley City, I will explain my vision of urban planning. And the second one, the Museum of Voodoo. I will take you complete different atmosphere. It is the religion of Voodoo. It is in Benin. It's a museum integrated in the heart of Porto Novo, which is the capital of Benin. And the third one, this project, we're working on it now. The third one is an old project, never built. It's in Riyadh. But the idea of showing these three projects is to show the urban planning, to show how a building integrates itself in a positive way with the city, and how a building integrates itself in a negative way. For the Valley City, in the Valley City, the concept is very simple. It's a city that will develop into 3 million square meters. We will start with 1 million, so all the analysis were done for 1 million square meter of development. So I convinced the client that we don't need to go higher than 3-story. We can go ground plus 3. By that, you can avoid the usage of elevators. And we'll see why, because as everybody else, we are targeting clean energy, we are targeting green city. So we took this mass, this is the number of square meters he needed, and we created the neighborhoods. And then we cut it in the middle, creating what we call the valley. And this valley will become like a series of piazzas where it will collect all the public spaces. So what's the idea? The idea is very simple. It's a car-free city, which means all the roads will be on the periphery. They will be outside the neighborhood. Each neighborhood, you can access it from outside. And then you have to walk all the way to the green area, which will collect all the public spaces, which means the hotel, the clubhouses, the restaurants, everything like that. Which means every tenant in this city or owner He have only to work, the maximum is 150 meters to reach this green area, and he has to do 3 stores up, which means what? Which means, in my opinion, this is what I call a green city. Okay? Architecture does help, for sure. The urban planning is more important in this case. Because if you let the people not use their cars, and if you give them a full green area where they can walk for kilometers, it means you succeeded to create a green city. This is the view at night. So the central part will be the common place and the neighborhoods will be on site. We were asked by the government of Benin to design the Musée de Voodoo, Museum for Voodoo. Voodoo, for you who doesn't know, is not black magic, as everybody thinks. It is a religion. It is the official religion of Benin. And before I did my research, I had very few knowledge, because I'm a big fan of this period of Picasso, where he talks about l'art sauvage, and in the writings of André Malraux, they talk a lot about, this African art that inspired him for many years, inspired Picasso for many years. Le Corbusier himself, he did some drawings on the voodoo, by the way. And I knew that this religion is related very closely to nature, to the water, and to the forest. And to understand more, I went there. I went to Ouida, where they have their Pope, the picture up. This is the Pope of Voodoo, who explained to me everything about the voodoo. He even made me go to the Temple of Pythons. It's a temple full of snakes, because the python is one of their gods. They convinced me they are not harmful. I believe them. Next to him, there is Da Silva. Da Silva is the owner of the land, and his grandfather was a slave. And this guy is a big fighter against slavery, and he's the one who's going to give the land. And this is his museum, the one you see here. Musée da Silva. This is his house on the back, and these are the buildings surrounding the site and the neighborhood. Of course, when we talk about Porto Novo, we're not talking about a modern contemporary city. It's a historical city. It's an African historical city. So the building, the project, will be integrated between these two old colonial houses, the house of the Silva himself, and the theater, which is called the Martin Luther King Theater. In front, the part we see here is the park of Porto Novo. But it used to be the sacred forest of voodoo. The whole area was the area of voodoo, and very few trees are remaining. If we look at the traditional architecture of Benin, it's the circular houses surrounded by a wall. And sometimes it is defensive, so the houses are connected to each other for protection. So the museum is basically inspired from this typology. It's a series of circles connecting to each other at 2 levels, and creating a piazza with a direct dialogue with Martin Luther King Theater, and the 2 old houses, which are now museums, one museum of slave and one museum for the Da Silva family. In this facade, it shows you the proportion. It shows you how the volume respects the existing tree. It doesn't exceed the height of this, what they call sacred forest. And as you can see, it's completely open, which means what? You have more than 50% of the spaces in this museum which are outdoor but completely covered, which means less use of energy. It is a very eco-friendly building. It will be built with terre battue, with rammed earth, or colored concrete. We are still studying both of the options. But as you can see, the 100% control of the weather. The sun will not go inside. It's fully protected from the rain. And the spaces on the upper floors represent themselves as big belvedere. So basically, while you are on the upper floor, you can have a full view to the whole city of Porto Novo. This is the main hall where you will have all the representation of all their gods. And these are some views of the interior of the museum. I will not explain the elements you see. There are different elements related to their religions. The lower floor, the cylinders that you saw are silos of light, and they will bring the light to the lower floor. The lower floor will be fully indoor, and it will have all the main pieces that they took back, most of them from France recently. And the circulation from the upper to the lower floor through the ramp, it has a direct view to the sacred forest. These are the facades, and this is the volume. I will end up with this old project we designed, and it was not built, unfortunately. It's also a circle, by chance. In the museum, you can, I guess you saw how the museum opens itself to the city. Here, it's exactly the other way around. This is a small house for a jewelry designer. She's someone who likes to be alone. She's not, she don't like to be open or exposed to people. This is in Riyadh. And this is the house of the parent, and her house will be a part of the garden. It is surrounded by a school, a supermarket, other houses, and stuff like that. So the idea was to isolate this house from the city. The plan is very simple. It's a circle, and then there is one indoor space and two outdoor spaces. This is the facade. It's very close facade, and this is the building. So the idea of this house, we have a very narrow entrance, a ramp, because she doesn't like steps, and then this slab that creates the house, which is two-part, one atelier/living room, and the other one is a bedroom with a small bathroom. And then a small private patio. So this would be the public, if she's receiving, friends or people, and this will be the private part where you have only one tree and a water feature. This is view from inside. So the idea of this house is to create a cocoon, a complete private space isolated from the city. And this was her wish when we designed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I myself have a few questions to ask about it. Honestly, regarding the museum in Orisha, I was taken away and blown away by how it relates to the context, by how it resonates with its surrounding. There is no apparent juxtaposition in any possible way. It's in a way, not in a way, it's factually derived from the context. Is this something, a technique that you, a culture that you apply in most of your projects, a project that is completely born from its context?
Sure. I did this presentation. I chose this project specifically for this presentation because we talked before about some buildings in Beirut. And I don't want to criticize other work, but what I said is that those people who designed those buildings, and we called them from outside Lebanon to do that, I don't think they have the knowledge of our culture. Okay? As I said at the beginning, a city can reject a building, and sometimes the city can embrace a building. If you ask me now about Beirut, and I will come back to the museum, I will tell you maybe the work of Zaha Hadid represents Hadid, the one here in the city center. Maybe Herzog and de Meuron also represents their work, but that's it. As for the rest, I don't see any of the signature architects represented in their work. Now, do they respect the context? Definitely not. And in my opinion, none of them. they don't respect, they don't care about the heritage, they don't care about anything. All they care about is to integrate their building and to make it look, you know, like attractive.
Not even integrate, it's just plugging it in, it's
exactly.
Wherever it is.
Exactly. So when I did this design, I went, I think 4 or 5 times to Benin, only for this. I stayed 1 month in Porto Novo, between Porto Novo and Vida. I met everybody. I did like 3 or 4 voodoo ceremony. I stayed with them, and I'm not going to talk about it now, but I stayed with them for like hours. I went to Da Silva in his house. He invited me 2 times for dinner. I stayed with him. I really needed to understand this country and to understand this religion, because at the end of the day, voodoo is a religion. But it's not only about voodoo, it's also about Porto Novo, because you're integrating a building in a very historical city. It's the most important city in Benin. Okay, and just a few, maybe 200 meters, there will be the new project by Francis Kéré, the new parliament of Benin. So you have to create this kind of dialogue, okay, between the surrounding. You have the cathedral, you have the old houses surrounding you, you have the Martin Luther King Theater, which is very important to him. As I told you, his grandfather was a slave. And all the house is surrounded by photography and sculpture about slavery and stuff like that. So integrating the building is more important than the subject itself, or as important as the subject itself. Okay, so what I try to do here is to marry both of them, you know, to create a museum that functions. You go to Benin, you don't want air conditioning, rarely they use it. Okay, they have heavy rain when it rains. Okay, so you need covered area, like I showed. The Belvedere is fully covered. People can walk inside the museum. The museum is inside and outside. So basically, you can be in and out all the time. It's indoor and outdoor. Okay, and I created this piazza with the surroundings, which will, you know, have like small restaurants and stuff like that to create a certain, you know, leisure life to this cultural building.
Yes, it definitely shows, because in the renders that you've showcased, it blends in smoothly. Like, you don't feel like it's opposing what's there. It doesn't feel off guard. It's just there, and it blends in. It looks, of course, new because it's a bit different, but it's inspired from heritage, from culture, which is what we need nowadays. Something else that you've mentioned, and thank you for talking about it, which is our responsibility as citizens in regards to the silos that are present at the port. You've mentioned that as a person, if it were up to you, you'd rather have them stay there as a memory for the future generations, as a statement, as a reminder for them to actually have to do something about it in the future. Would you keep them as is as an architect, or would you have an intervention?
That's a big question. Definitely you will have an intervention. You cannot keep them the same way they are. I showed some examples where, you know, some of them, they became like museums, other like that. Yeah. And other than city of silos, there are many other examples. To be honest, I never thought about it, okay, at that stage, because I felt the anger of my friend, and the 3 of them, in fact, you know, but even you feel kind of, I don't want to say depression, but they are like, you know, in a way really depressed, and, you know, I felt this anger, and I felt it many times when I talk to people from Beirut, and I have it myself, by the way. Okay, yeah, but I don't want...
The frustration is there in our everyday life.
Everybody is angry. But, I mean, to know what to do now, I don't know. Honestly. I don't know what to do, whether to keep it the same way it is, or, you know, if you ask, you know, it's known that the romantic approach of keeping buildings is to keep them the way they are. You don't touch them, you keep it as it is. Then you have all other schools. You can, sometimes you can cut them. You can do whatever you want to create. I don't know what to do. But what I know for sure, because of our short memory as Lebanese, because the fact that history keeps repeating itself, you know,
and our ability to adapt to all the current conditions.
I liked what my colleague said. Don't tell me it's the war that destroyed. It's not the war. And I do agree with him, because we had so many fights so far, and unfortunately we failed. Okay, you mentioned, and thank you for your introduction, that I'm a caver and stuff. We fought to protect many caves, and we failed. Okay, they want to break everything in this country. So that's why I say, yes, we should definitely keep it. If they see it as ugly, let them see it as ugly. You see?
I understand your point completely and frustration, but in the very end of the day, we just need a beacon of hope to keep carrying on. And in order for the future generations, as we previously mentioned, we have like 1,500 students that are graduating yearly. At least we need to give them a reason to stay in the country.
Sure.
My very last question from me, I'm not aware if the audience have any yet, but do you have any specific city whereby its approach nowadays to architecture doesn't have many juxtaposition styles? Like you've mentioned the bad examples, but if you could think of one city that
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
I love it. I think it's still, you know, even when John Novell did this tower, the Akbar Tower, I know that lots of people don't like it. By the way, people from Barcelona, and I saw, we go back to the same thing, you know. Richard Mayer has done the museum there. I visited the museum, I didn't like it. But it doesn't have a negative impact in the city. You see, that's more important. It doesn't matter if we like it or we don't. I don't like to say beautiful or ugly about architecture, but it doesn't matter if we like it or we don't, but the impact of the buildings on the city, this is what I care about, you see. Now, when you go to the coast, yes, there are some projects, Frangeri, stuff like that, very, you know, like a bit showy if you want. But the heart of the city, I think, is very homogeneous.
Are you looking to teach at any university? Maybe we could all learn from you in various courses, actually.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marwan.
Thank you.
Does anybody from the audience have any questions to pose to Mr. Zgheib? No? I think he covered all the points already. Thank you so much for your time and for your presentation.
Thank you very much.